Blessings, beloveds. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you again today. Alright, I'm following up with the theme on composite charts, so the world of relationships. Quite ironically, I'm not even in a relationship, and yet I'm so focused on this topic. But I think that's really to do with simply the fact that astrology works on so many different levels, and it's just a wonderful tool to use to actually view the world of relationships and why they work the way they do, or why they don't work when they don't work, and all the complex dynamics that are involved in a relationship between two people, or more than two people for that matter. As I've mentioned previously, there are so many different styles and types of relationships, because our whole life is about relationships on some level. In fact, not on some level, I would be more inclined to say on a fundamental level. Unless you are a monk, perhaps, and you are living in an isolated area where you are having no contact with human beings, then the relationship you're having is with yourself. Primarily, which we all are having a relationship with ourselves, and in fact the relationship with ourselves is the most important one, apart from our relationship with source, right? That is obviously the primary relationship, but it is that relationship that then enables us to have this relationship with ourselves as well. And obviously, because we live in a world of 7 billion people plus, and we are creatures made in the sense of we need each other to survive and to experience and all those different things. Relationships is such a big part of our existence in this human form, in this 3D reality. And not only here, but in other realms as well. We have these, we have spiritual relationships while we're here, but certainly I get the sense that when we are in other realms, we are still relating, just from a very different point of existence, non-local, I guess you could say. Anyway, that said, what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is the composite moon in the composite chart. Okay, now I've already been through the composite sun with you, and the thing is, so let's just recap. The composite sun shows the purpose of the two people coming together, the relationship purpose, why they've come together, and how they're going to make it work, if at all. But what is essentially the meaning of them coming together? The purpose actually is a better word, okay? And the moon is it's the medium that shows or facilitates the emotional expression of the couple, of the relationship. So, can this relationship survive emotionally? Yes or no, is seen through the position of the composite moon. Okay, there are obviously factors that will influence this greatly, and today I'm only going to go through the moon in every single house like I did with the sun, and you will notice that there's not a great deal of difference, okay? Because we're talking about the two primary masculine and feminine luminaries, okay, the two lights of the heavens of the chart, if you like. So they both have a primary function with an altered, I suppose, meaning, if you like. As I said, the sun is the spirit, the purpose, it is the goals that the couple will achieve together, the expression of the personality of the couple, because a couple has a particular aura and energy and style about them, and you could say personality, as well. Going back to the moon, so the moon shows, as I said, it's the vehicle, or the medium for that emotional expression, and how that is working or not working, how that is supported or not supported. And the moon, as we all know, rules the sign Cancer, so it's connected to our subjective nature. It's a very subjective experience, the moon, okay? And it's the world of emotions and feelings and past and unconscious motivated behaviors as well, hence why it's so subjective. So we act out through the moon without any thought at all. It's an instinctual, unconscious response to life and to what we feel in life and about life and our own life, okay? So it's the same principle in the composite chart, except this emerges through the two people, okay? So does the couple have an emotional connection? And if there is emotional support to the moon, then it means, yes, the couple has an emotional connection and it is supported, and they feel, because the moon also symbolizes in the composite chart what the couple feel they have in common together. So there's a sense when the moon is doing really well in a composite chart, that is, if it's in a good house, it has good aspects, it means that the couple feel that they have a lot in common, and they feel bonded, they feel connected, they feel like their feelings are mutual, if you like, in certain areas and aspects of life. And obviously that's going to be seen through the location of where the composite moon falls. Now, these videos are going up on Facebook as well, and sorry, I'm a bit dyslexic today. I think the moon's about to go into Pisces, which would explain my when the moon's in Pisces, I get a little bit disconnected from this 3D world. I feel quite floaty. Perhaps it's because I've got some 12th house planets and Venus in Pisces. So I tune into that Pisces energy really easily. Okay, back on point. What I was going to say was that once you watch these videos, if you haven't looked at your composite chart, you probably are wanting to do that. And as I mentioned already, you can do that, I'm pretty certain you can do that through astro.com. So the way to do that, I'm not sure exactly, what you have to prompt on astro.com, but you'll figure it out if you play around. But what you need, before you even go to astro.com, you need obviously your own time of birth, place of birth and date of birth, and you need your partner's date of birth, time of birth and place of birth, or another individual that you may be looking at. Maybe it's somebody you're interested in, maybe it's somebody you've just met and you are thinking about, what the potentiality could be in terms of an intimate relationship with this person. Well, looking at this composite chart is going to really make you very aware and really help you understand a lot of dynamics and dimensions on so many different levels. So it's worthwhile really looking at it. And it's not easy to do if you haven't studied astrology, and if you haven't worked with composite charts before, but that's another reason I'm here. Apart from sharing and hopefully maybe teaching, some of you some new insights and new understandings, I'm also here to offer my skills and my experience and my service. So reading charts on various different levels, whether that's reading your own birth chart or a relationship chart, business charts, etc. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, okay? I am here for that too, so don't forget that. Okay, so the composite moon in the first house is very similar to the composite sun in the first house, okay? So essentially the houses that we went through when I talked about the sun being the strongest houses, it's exactly the same for the moon, okay? And the more challenging, difficult houses that that don't really support, in this case, an emotional balance, clarity, or connection, is seen through the same houses that pose those challenges that the sun reflected. But I'll go through it anyway, so you will get another listen. Except this is the moon, so it is a different thing. Fundamentally, we're talking about the emotional connection between the couple, and do they have one at all? And if they do, is it being supported or is it being challenged? Now, if something is being challenged, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work or that it's doomed to fail. But that, again, that depends on the definition of the challenge in any given composite chart. And I'll give some examples of what some challenging, stressful aspects would look like, just to give you an idea. So, composite moon in the first house is a wonderful place. It's a very, very strong place, in fact, for the moon, just like the sun. It just means that the couple are very close, have come together to really support each other emotionally as well, but feel a very strong oneness and connection with each other. Sorry, I just had a mental blank. It's a feeling of belonging together again. It's the Aries house, so there's just a strong unison that is represented through that first house. And again, the couple shine together. Moon in the first house, it shines, it illuminates their aura, their energy, their union, and how they are together, and obviously how they're seen together as well, because the first house is how others see us, or the ascendant. So there's a strong emotional compatibility with the composite moon in the first house. And great house, as I said, in short, I'm going to keep this very short like I did with the sun in the composite chart. One, I suppose, thing to just be aware of, though, is that because the moon has such a subjective nature, the composite moon in the first house might at times mean that the couple have a real difficulty in being objective about each other. And that can be a bit of a problem, because if we cannot have objectivity and clarity, that can cause certain perceptions that are not necessarily accurate at times, and can create some confusion, or some projective factors come into the picture. Okay. Composite moon in the second house, again, very similar to the composite sun in the second house, except not as focused, in the sense of, the sun in the second house its purpose was very much about the material world, and it is the same with the moon in the second house, but the moon can be quite comfortable here. Okay, because if we think about the second house, it's the Taurus house in the moon in terms of essential dignities, which is, when a planet is in its rulership, its detriment, fall, etc. So when a planet is doing really well, or when a planet is not, that's what essential dignities basically are. So the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus. So exalted just means it's just the one step below rulership, if you like. And I don't even know if you could really view it like that, because an exaltation is a very powerful position for a planet to be in. So that when somebody's born with a moon in Taurus, that means their moon is exalted. It's a wonderful place to have the moon, actually. So that makes me think then that when you've got the composite sun in the second house, there's something exalted about that composite moon. Okay, but how it sort of tends to manifest or play out is that the emotional security of the couple is going to be very heavily reliant on the ability to create things in the material world together. So that's going to be a primary focus, and that is actually what's going to give the emotional security to each person. Without that, there's going to be emotional insecurity, there's going to be problems. So that material world, and obviously the world of values as well, is going to be really primary and really key to establishing an emotional connection for this couple. Okay. Where am I? I've totally lost a page. Never mind, I'll just use what's in my mind. Okay, so the third house, which is the Gemini house. Now, again, this is very similar to the composite sun in the third house. It's not a romantic, emotional place, but it is different to the composite sun in the third house, because we're talking about the moon. So on a really positive level, so third house is not difficult for the composite moon, by the way. It literally translates into the couple basically communicate their feelings on a day-to-day basis. Okay, third house is the Gemini house, ruled by Mercury. It's the house of daily activities as well. You know, small journeys. You know, so little small distance traveling. You know, a couple driving around together all the time. They could be the couple that, you know, drop each other off at work and pick each other up, and you know, they just have this whole routine, this whole thing happening with driving together or riding bikes together. That's another thing that could come out. This is on a light-hearted level, but essentially in terms of their emotional bonding and connection and nature, they have a strong need to be able to communicate to each other daily on these very sort of basic mundane levels. But it's the feeling level. It's how they feel about these daily life things. There's a very strong connection in that way. And also the third house connects to relatives, as in our own relatives, family relatives. There are other houses that signify very specifically certain types of relatives, but the third house is generally all relatives. So therefore, the couple will be very involved in each other's families and relatives. There'll be a lot of connections there, and they'll be spending a lot of time with each other's relatives. That's just another theme that comes up with the composite moon in the third house. So it's not a difficult house. It just means that emotionally they need to communicate every single day, just that the general sort of ebb and flow of life and what's happening with them on a day-to-day basis. Okay, fourth house is a very strong house for the moon, just like it is for the composite sun. So, you know, the moon rules the fourth house in the natural order of the zodiac. The moon is the ruler of Cancer. So put the composite moon in the fourth house, it's really describing a couple that, again, feel an incredibly strong emotional bond and connection, and very strong feeling that they would want to live together, actually. So, you know, maybe buy some property together. That obviously often comes up very strongly with the composite moon in the fourth house. Feeling of that they belong together and they can, you know, just turn off from the world out there, as it were, and just really go into their own world together. It's a very private space as well for the composite moon. So this couple have a very strong private world and a very inner reflective world, and they really get each other and feel each other from that deep emotional space. And it is in the home and the private components that this couple shares together. It is all these elements that actually gives a strong emotional container. The moon acts as a container for their emotional security and emotional bonding. So yeah, it's a very favourable place for the composite moon to be in. And I just want to say that with every house that I go through with regards to the composite moon, or the composite sun for that matter, do not forget that I am giving you the meaning of the composite sun on its own, the composite moon on its own. We haven't even begun to explore how all of this would differ and change or adjust when we're looking at, well, what does the moon have aspected to it? What does the sun have aspected to it? That's going to be the next level of understanding what the composite moon and composite sun literally means in the composite chart for you, okay, and your partner, your relationship. Fifth house, very similar to the sun in the composite chart. Very favorable house, strong house, a lot of fun, and it means that the couple will really feel good together. They will have a lot of fun together, a lot of enjoyment, a lot of activities, doing things together, playing, creating, but just that there's just a general feel-good sense of this connection and this relationship. Children is a highly probable factor, whether it's, well, there'll be an inherent desire to want to have children together. But, you know, that depends on many different factors as well. How old is this couple when they meet? Have they got children from previous marriages, etc., etc.? So we must look at things in the complete context, okay, when we're looking at a composite chart, where we are applying certain methods or certain ways of understanding things on various dimensions, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, etc. But we are applying that through the specific individual or individuals that we are looking at, right? So if it's you, then I'd be looking at your life, how you've grown up, where you've come from, what's your background, what was your, you know, family experience like, you know, what are your origins, you know, all these things need to be taken into context when you're looking at any chart at all, whether it's a composite, natal chart, anything, okay? Getting back to the fifth house, one of the challenges that could present is that because this couple has so much fun, which is not a bad thing at all, but one of the challenges they could be confronted with is that when they need to get serious about things, they don't really know how to do that. They find that really difficult to sit down and look at things on a serious level, because the one of the aspects that connects and binds this couple together is through their sense of joy and fun. So they don't want to get serious about things. They just want to keep the fun momentum going. And why wouldn't you, right? But, you know, there are times in life when we need to put on a serious hat and, you know, view things from a more considered serious level, methodical level and so forth, because the house is quite spontaneous. You know, it's about a lot of energy and activities and so forth, right? So that's the challenging side, but it's so minuscule compared to the overall support that the moon gives in the fifth house for a couple. It's an awesome place, very strong, much like the sun being there too. Sixth house, again, just like the composite sun in the sixth, it's not a good place. Not a good place for the composite moon. There's an inherent quality of imbalance, as I've mentioned before. It's that whole give and take principle. One person is taking, one person is giving, and it's an emotional imbalance that basically surfaces in the relationship, and it brings up that whole martyr experience, which ultimately leads to resentment. So yeah, not a good place when one person is most likely going to be subordinated in the relationship. It's just how it is. It's just the nature of the sixth house. You know, the sixth house is not about intimate personal relationships. It can be working relationships, but not intimate personal relationships. It's the house of service and work and duty and so forth. And that's why those elements come through either the sun or the moon in a very imbalanced manner. Because it's just not the house of personal intimate relationships. So if you got the composite sun in the sixth, you might want to reconsider your relationship. Or if you want to stay in your relationship because there are other factors there that keep you there, then by coming into this understanding, if you didn't have this knowledge prior to this video, let's say, then you can possibly work through it, but what it requires is a constant conversation, checking in, reminder between the couple. Is everything okay? Are we working on this on a balanced level? Are you feeling that there's fairness and equality and balance in this? So it's a lot of work, for a lot of other couples, they don't even have to verbalize that stuff. It just naturally flows. So can you imagine having to constantly check in if that's working out okay for both parties? It can be quite exhausting. Anyway, not an ideal place for the composite 6th house moon. 7th house, again, great house. Much like the sun in the composite house, there's a very strong emotional connection between the people. There's a feeling that they've come together for a really important purpose, and their relationship is really important on an emotional level. It's a very harmonious connection. It's a very important, it brings up that feeling of our meeting, me meeting you, has a real importance to it. There's something very special about this, and I feel really bonded with you and really connected with you, and I want to explore this and experience this relationship. That's what it brings up, which is great. Very strong house for marriage, traditional marriage. Obviously that would then translate to longevity of relationships, just like the sun does in the 7th house. It just brings that feeling of the couple feeling emotionally connected and balanced in this partnership, this union. So great house. 8th house, very important house, like the sun. The sun brings up that real sense of fatedness. Two people are really fated in being together. The moon brings up not so much fatedness, but it's more about there's such an incredibly intense emotional bond and connection that doesn't even need words. It's Scorpio. And there's a strong sense that the two of you have come together to experience a lot of changes through your union. So deep emotional transformation can occur through this house together that you otherwise perhaps wouldn't be able to access individually or separately. So there's something about the union that enables this very deep emotional transformation, which enables each individual in this relationship to get a much better understanding of themselves, because this house invokes such introspective periods. So there's a lot of probing, investigating and exploring on very deep emotional levels, which is ultimately transforming and transcending. So it's a very powerful house. Shared values is another really important factor of the 8th house, and that could extend to the material world in shared possessions and shared real estate and property as well, very similar to the 2nd house. The only, I suppose, challenge about this house is the couple need to be careful that they don't get bogged down by the intensity of feelings and find themselves feeling really stuck somewhere or totally overwhelmed by the intensity. So there needs to be things in place that balance that emotional intensity out, otherwise it can be too heavy. 9th house, composite moon, great placement, not necessarily a romantic placement, but it's certainly a great placement for friendships, and a lot of long-lasting, intimate, personal love relationships begin from a foundation of friendship. So that's one possibility. But essentially what it means is that the two people share an emotional connection and understanding to similar belief systems about life, philosophical systems about life, could be similar religions. So a fundamental core belief about what life is and what is this life about. These two people feel that they share very similar ideas and truths about life on that level. So they have incredible conversations and feel, that's the key word. Wherever the composite moon is located, the key word is always the couple feel. They feel X, Y, Z. They feel blah, blah, etc. Right? So in the ninth house, they feel very bonded and connected through their ideals and philosophical outlook on life that binds them and bonds them together. So there's a common shared experience on that level. And that level is quite vast and very expansive, because we are talking about the ninth house, which is the Sagittarian house, which is the house that rules expansion and taking us beyond our very limited left brain. It's the Sag mind, Jupiter house. So it's a wonderful place. 10th house is another great house for the composite moon. Again, very similar to the composite sun, could evoke a very public life for the couple. It's a very fortunate placement, actually, particularly in a business relationship, but certainly really supports a personal, intimate relationship as well. What it gives is this: it gives the feeling that we have come together for a real purpose. We've come to create something together. There's a strong feeling about that. Now, some people who are what I guess you could say not operating from that feeling level as much. They are more thinkers or more the practical people, etc. I would think that when it comes to the composite moon, the whole feeling dimension, even if they're not a overly feeling type person, is going to still be there. It has to be there because it's the moon, and the moon describes the container that holds this union together, and how they feel, how the couple feel connected, and through what they feel connected. So going back to the 10th house, it's a feeling that you've come to do something together, and not only have you come to do it together, but it's a strong sense that you can actually really achieve this life together as a union. Something really important about that gives that sense and that feeling to the couple. The challenging component with the composite moon in the 10th house would be that there's an overemphasis with the external world, because we're talking about the 10th house, which is an angular house, which is why the moon is very strongly placed here, because angular houses are incredibly powerful. So the angular houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10. Any planets in those houses are they're like on 100% speed dial. They're completely plugged in, tuned in, activated, for better or for worse. So they're heavily energized. So, you know, the composite moon in the 10th house means that this moon is really plugged in, it's really activated. But because it's an external house, it activates, it is activated very much to project out there into the world. So the couple are operating from that external level very much, right? Which is supported. It's supported from the world out there. You know, in other words, people love this couple. They're liked, they're appreciated, they're looked up to, they shine in the public. And if they're not a famous couple, then how that plays out is that this couple shines on that social sphere. So it could be a couple that's really popular on that social dimension of life in their world, in the world they've created. But what can happen is the overemphasis of the external focus takes over, and the couple are too focused on that external level, and when they need to take time and introspect and look within, that can be a bit of a problem. So that would be some of the imbalance that might show up, but that's not something that is difficult, inherently really difficult, because it's something that the couple can really consciously choose to work through and be aware of, and if they're aware of it, then they can potentially prevent it from actually happening. So 10th house is awesome house for composite moon. 11th house, very similar. Again, it's a very strong placement, very favourable placement. The couple essentially feel like friends. You know, there's a core, inherent, fundamental connection between the two people that they share on a friendship level. So their emotional security and their emotional bonding and connection comes through the sheer fact that they're actually really good mates, as we would say here in Australia. Really good friends, you know, a great companionship, and from that level everything else is built. In addition to that, you know, they share friendships, groups together. You know, that brings them an emotional sort of connection, if you like, the connections that they have with people and friends. So it could be like, you know, two people meet, for instance, they have lots of different friends, and they have a way of bringing both worlds together, and it works. It just really works, and they both feel really comfortable and really at ease and really connected with this world of very different people. So it's a wonderful placement for the moon, and it also again highlights that these two people, the couple, share similar goals and wishes and dreams, and they're able to achieve these together. So, you know, how wonderful is that, to be in a relationship where you and your partner share the same sort of dreams and visions and goals and wishes, and you support each other in actually achieving those. And how great is that? Why wouldn't you want that, right? 12th house moon. 12th house moon, very similar story to the 12th house sun. Not a favourable placement. I've had that a couple of times in my experiences, and they were very short-lived relationships, actually. There's an overall, it's a very demanding position for the moon, because how it plays out is like this. Both people essentially feel that